All right, we promised linebacker talk, and we talked offense for a good 25 of our 28 minutes so far. So, Chris, let's go into the LBs. I would say a situation there where I don't even know if that group's getting as much love yet as they probably should. If you look from a national standpoint, I actually meant in my show prep to dive. I feel like when I was looking at this earlier, our trusty Phil Still Mag, that maybe there wasn't as much love quite for the linebackers as there should have been in the SEC rankings of units. And dude, just how many teams in the country can say we're bringing back our top 3 guys at this position? And the top 3 were already pretty good even before a year of development, right? Like in today's college football world, that's just not as common as it once was. And even if you compare, I mean, they ended up playing very, I would say, pretty well to very well, somewhere in that range last year at that position. But remember the conversation this time last year? It was, you're replacing, Demetrius Knight. You're replacing, you look at Debo Williams the last few years, like you're replacing some guys who have played a bunch of ball for you or played very, very well in their year here, like with D Knight. And, Bam Mark Scott, let's not forget about him, how well he played down the stretch of his career. And I remember Clayton White telling us, like, man, these guys are young. He's like getting introduced to new lingo. Like, they're keeping him young, I think was a quote he used at the time. Now, guess what? All those guys are veterans. They're all back. I think J.O., J.R., both great athletes. But, man, I would even say don't forget Sean Murphy. Like, Sean had a really good finish to last year and, by all indications, a really strong spring. So we'll get into the depth of that position here in a moment. But your 3 guys for 2 spots, you already feel pretty good about that. And that is without even factoring in how much maybe of a developmental jump you might see from that group from one year to the next.
Yeah, that's a great point, because not only are you getting some guys back who played well for you, but they all still have development that they can do. Sean Murphy, former very highly rated guy that just at Bama and FSU had not put it together yet. And he started to put it together some last year for South Carolina. You look at J.O. I got to sit down with him for a conversation for the Garnet Trust Hour on the radio, Wes. And it was very insightful, because I didn't even realize, growing up in Munich, Germany, when he got to Alabama in 2024, there was still a language barrier to a degree. Not only are you going in from a, playing club American football in Germany where you've got 5 or 6 defensive calls, jumping into that playbook, that's a big enough transition. But there's also, he admitted, still kind of learning like how to communicate better in English. And so still saw the field as a true freshman at Bama, saw what he did last year. The athleticism always jumps off the tape, but he's a guy that's a prime candidate, it seems like, in year 2 in this scheme to take a jump. And then J.R. Johnson, one of the better athletes on the team. He's huge. We were told he ran in the 4.4 range this summer pretty consistently. And he also, I think, is a great candidate to take another jump. So individually and collectively, you've got a group that you feel pretty good about. And like you said, it's kind of rare to get all your starters back, or 3 guys for 2 spots, even better. But to know that, hey, these guys can still get better and may frankly have a better defensive line on the whole in front of them, that kind of, gives you some reasons for optimism. And then, you go to the guys behind them and what can you get out of the depth of that group as well.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things there, man, to expound on. I made this point in my defensive back preview on Gamecock Central. All these units are tied together. Like, we break them down in a vacuum, but your linebacker play, especially when you're talking about run fits and stopping the run, is going to always sort of be interlinked with your defensive line play. Your defensive line play and your pass rush ability is always going to be interlinked with your secondary. And how often do you see a guy in the secondary get blamed for giving up completion in front of him? And it's like, well, the quarterback had all day. That's like rush and cover will always be interlinked and kind of intertwined. So I think this improved defensive line, we believe, we think, I think a lot of that has to include a healthy Dylan Stewart, right? Like a back to himself Dylan Stewart to be like super, super improved overall on the D line. If that happens, all the other things we're talking about probably fall into place. Well, what if you are improved there, man? What if your linebackers do take a jump? This was a pretty good defense last year. And I think my expectations, I think my floor is that this defense is going to be good. But if you start checking some of these other boxes we're talking about, then that ceiling kind of starts going from good to pretty good to, dare I say, great and elite. We don't know that, but I don't think we can rule out that possibility. Like some defenses or just some units in general, you look at going into a year and you go, man, even if they maximize what they have, maybe being decent is like the ceiling for that group. If some things fall into place, they could be pretty freaking good on defense. That's going to start, but partially at that linebacker group, man. Like, remember J.R. Johnson a couple of years ago? We're already hearing athletically, this guy looks like D Knight. And you were kind of going, well, that's a mouthful. That's a big sentence. Also, Chris, I remember 2 seasons ago, we were hearing things like, hey, we're so veteran at linebacker that has opened things up for Clayton White to be a little bit more multiple, a little bit more diverse in what they're trying to do up front defensively. Last year, with so many newcomers, I think it was a little bit more of a, hey, let's get back to basics. Let's let these athletes be athletes. Let's just let them go play. Does it shift back into what we were talking about 2 seasons ago? Now that you have, how many combined snaps do you think you have at this point among JR, JO, and Sean Murphy? Like, there's a bunch of snaps there, man. So I got to imagine, I don't know if they'll tell us this, but I got to imagine we're going to see a little bit more just diversity, be a little bit more multiple with what they do with those guys this year because they can handle it at this point.
Yeah, and plus athleticism in that group as well. Particularly when you're talking about Jo and most of all J.R. Johnson. He's just a really, really high level athlete, and so if he can take the next step as a player, and he already did some really good things last year. If those guys individually can take that next step to get good play in front of them, you're right. I think it raises the ceiling of that room. Wes, who are some guys to watch out behind those? Obviously, when you got your top 3 back, those are the guys you're riding with, right? Like those guys, they're going to take the lion's share of the snaps. But when you talk about special teams, when you talk about, some guys that maybe could pull down some snaps, who do you start with? I think of Jamian Risher, former walk-on, senior. Staff seems to really like him. I think about Donovan Darden, who played didn't redshirt last year because he played on special teams so much. I think played in every game on special teams. Could he see a little bit more run at linebacker? They kind of have a group of some younger guys. Risher's not one, he's older, but some younger guys that redshirted or haven't played as much that I think could step up as well.
Yeah, and Austin here with a good question. Is Darden's best spot still linebacker? Can he occupy a similar role to Fred in his freshman year? I think this is the year you're going to start to really answer that question. Like, there was some chatter, our guy Charles Power. Hey, is Donovan Darden, is he more of an edge? Is he more of an edge rusher? South Carolina, Clayton White, these guys love to put these tall, physical, long, fast athletes at linebacker and turn them loose. And so with Darden, he looks the part like impressively. Like, this dude looks exactly like an SEC linebacker should. I think what we start to maybe find out this year, Chris, maybe you can get a lead on a Kent State. Maybe you can get a lead on a Towson. Start to get these young guys in there. Can you go do all the other linebacker things, the instincts, the flipping your hips, the just flowing to the football, taking proper angles, getting off blocks, all those things that kind of play into linebacker as opposed to just, hey, rush the passer or stop the run as a more edge defensive end type guy. I think we will start to learn that about Darden. As for Risher, I think he definitely fits the mold of someone we've tried to tell people, I think since the spring, hey, keep an eye on this guy. Staff loves him. He's going to play a lot on special teams. Could take on a reserve role. He may step up and just beat out all those guys for that fourth linebacker spot. That will be something to keep an eye on. I think you look at Holloway at linebacker, another young guy who kind of gets forgotten a little bit, and probably, was, I would say, Chris, maybe a little bit further along just in his development as an actual linebacker out of high school than some of those other guys. Just maybe isn't quite as physically dominant and athletic as like a Donovan Dart. So does he get into that mix? It is a position you feel really good about those first three, and you feel good about the depth, but you also do not want to start to test it with any injuries to those first three. You know what I'm saying? That's where you might have questions. And if we're going to take a little tiny glimpse ahead into the future, three upperclassmen in J.O., J.R., and Sean Murphy. They're going to have some, at least a couple of them will have, like Sean is done after this year, right?
Yep.
JR would technically have another year. JO would technically have another year. But they're going to have some NFL decisions coming up. Can you start to feel good about the future of that spot by some of those young guys playing a little bit more and putting themselves in a position to springboard into next year, Chris? Or are you start thinking like, all right, this is another one of those portal spots when you look ahead to the offseason?
Yeah, and you look at AJ Holloway, most improved player on special teams, as named this spring. So even if it's not a lot of snaps at linebacker, he's someone that the staff seems to like and seems to trust there. Keenan Britt, signee from the high school class, transitioning, played a lot of edge in high school, another one of those guys, transitioning full-time to linebacker, but I think got the newcomer of the spring award at special teams. So even if it's not a lot of snaps this year, can you get them integrated a little bit in those situations that you were talking about? And can they give you some help on special teams if the staff thinks that they need to play on special teams? I think that's a couple other things to watch at this position. But those top three guys and then that fourth guy, they're going to play the most this year. And that makes sense because you've got them all back and they've all played well and they can all even get better.
Yep. And most importantly, Chris, they can run sideline to sideline. How many plays to the outside did we see in 2024 where you start to see those linebackers cut off outside runners and perimeter screens that went for gains the years prior? To me, that's been the biggest difference in this linebacking group starting in 2024, the ability to run sideline to sideline and chase down ball carriers, wide receivers, quarterbacks, and the like. So I think we'll see a lot more of that this year.